courtroom was silent when the judge asked if I had a lawyer, and I opened my mouth to say no, but someone else answered first. I'll never forget that moment, standing there in my borrowed dress, hands shaking, knowing that in less than an hour I'd probably be going to prison for something I didn't do. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up right there on the polished floor. Behind me, reporters whispered and scratched notes in their little pads. To my right sat Gregory Ashford, the man whose mansion I'd cleaned for 3 years, the man who was now accusing me of stealing $200,000 from his safe. He wore a suit that probably cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined. His lawyer, a sharp-faced woman with perfect hair, had a stack of papers so thick it looked like a weapon. And I had nothing. No lawyer, no money for one. Just the truth, which suddenly felt like the smallest, most useless thing in the world. Hey friends, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to comment where you are watching from. Someone close to you might be watching too. Like, share, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story. Make sure to watch till the very end, because the final twist is something you definitely don't want to miss. So let's continue. Ms. Rivers, the judge said, and her voice wasn't mean, just tired. Do you have legal representation? The courtroom felt like it was spinning. I gripped the table in front of me. My public defender had quit yesterday, something about too many cases, not enough time. They said they'd try to get me someone else, but court was today, right now. I opened my mouth. No, Your Honor, She does. The voice came from the back of the room, clear and strong. Everyone turned. Even Gregory Ashford's perfect posture cracked a little as his head whipped around. A young man walked down the center aisle. He couldn't have been more than 25, wearing jeans and a button-up shirt that wasn't even ironed. His dark hair was messy, like he'd just woken up, but his eyes, I recognized those eyes. They were the same eyes I'd seen peeking around corners when I vacuumed the upstairs hallway. The same eyes that had watched me from the kitchen doorway when I made lunch, the same eyes that belonged to the quiet boy who'd grown into a quiet young man who'd left for college 5 years ago and barely came home. Daniel Ashford, Gregory's son. Your Honor, Daniel said, and his voice didn't shake even though he was walking into a courtroom full of people staring at him like he'd grown a second head. I'm representing Ms. Rivers. I passed the bar exam last month. The judge raised her eyebrows. You're an attorney? Yes, ma'am. He pulled a paper from his back pocket, unfolded it, and handed it to the bailiff. My credentials. Gregory stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Daniel, what the hell are you— Sit down, Mr. Ashford, the judge said, not even looking at him. She studied Daniel's paper, then looked at him over her glasses. This is unusual, Mr. Ashford. Very unusual. I understand, Your Honor, but Ms. Rivers deserves representation and I'm qualified to provide it. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't understand. Daniel barely knew me. We'd exchanged maybe 20 words total in the 3 years I'd worked in that house. Why would he help me now? Why would he go against his own father? The judge sighed. Very well. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Mr. Ashford, use that time to consult with your client. And I do hope you know what you're doing. The gavel banged. Everyone stood. My legs felt like water. Daniel walked over to me, and for the first time I could see he was nervous. His hands were stuffed in his pockets, and there was a tightness around his mouth, but when he looked at me, something in his expression was gentle. Ms. Rivers, he said quietly, we need to talk, fast. They put us in a small room that smelled like old coffee and stress. Daniel closed the door, and suddenly we were alone, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. Why are you doing this? The words came out harsh, almost angry. You don't know me, your father— My father is lying. The sentence hung in the air between us like smoke. I stared at him. What? Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for me to do the same. I did, even though sitting felt impossible. Everything felt impossible. I know my father, Daniel said, and I know you. Not well, but enough. I've watched you for 3 years, Ms. Rivers. You never took anything. Not even the food from the fridge that he told you to help yourself to. You brought your own lunch every single day in that same blue bag. You never asked for anything extra. You never complained. Not even when he changed your hours with no notice or when he cut your holiday bonus. My throat went tight. You noticed that? I notice a lot of things. More than people think. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My father's been acting strange for months. Secretive, stressed. He's been taking phone calls in his study with the door locked. He fired his accountant back in March and hired a new one, someone I'd never heard of. And then suddenly, 3 weeks ago, he accuses you of stealing $200,000 in cash. I know you didn't, that's why I'm here. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly, but nothing in my life had ever been that simple. Your father has cameras everywhere. He has receipts, records, everything. His lawyer showed me copies yesterday. They have me on camera going into his study. They have timestamps that match when the money went missing. I know. I've seen the evidence and it's convincing, but it's not the whole story. Then what's the whole story? Daniel's jaw tightened. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Today. We have 15 minutes. I know. He pulled out his phone and started typing so fast his thumbs blurred. I sat there, useless, watching him. My brain couldn't keep up. Nothing made sense. Yesterday, I'd been sure I was going to prison. Today, a man I barely knew was sitting across from me, calling his own father a liar. Daniel, I said, and my voice cracked. Even if you believe me, what can you do? You just became a lawyer. Your dad's attorney has been doing this for 20 years. The evidence is incomplete, and I'm betting it's incomplete on purpose. He looked up from his phone. Ms. Rivers. Can I call you something else? Ms. Rivers feels wrong. The question was so unexpected I almost laughed. Sarah, my name is Sarah. Sarah. He nodded like he was testing it out. Sarah, I need you to trust me. I know that's asking a lot, but I need you to trust me for the next few hours, okay? Can you do that? I looked at his face, really looked at it. There were shadows under his eyes like he hadn't slept. His shirt had a small stain on the collar, coffee maybe. He didn't look like a powerful lawyer. He looked like a kid who was in way over his head. But his eyes were steady, and something in them reminded me of my brother back before he got sick. That same stubborn determination that said, I'm not giving up, no matter what. Okay, I whispered. I trust you. When we walked back into the courtroom, Gregory's lawyer looked like a shark that had just smelled blood. She stood up with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Your Honor, the prosecution is ready to proceed. The judge nodded. Mr. Ashford, are you ready to represent your client? Daniel stood. Yes, Your Honor. Then let's begin. Ms. Crawford, call your first witness. The next hour was a blur of words I could barely follow. Gregory's lawyer, Ms. Crawford, called witness after witness. The accountant, who testified about the missing money. The security company guy who showed the camera footage of me entering Gregory's study on the day the money disappeared. A handwriting expert who said my signature was on the logbook that tracked who went into the study and when. Every piece of evidence was a nail in my coffin. I watched the jury's faces, and I could see them deciding. Guilty. She's guilty. Look at her, sitting there with her cheap dress and her court-appointed lawyer who looks like he wandered in off the street. Daniel didn't ask many questions during all of this. He took notes, his pen scratching across paper in sharp, quick strokes. A few times he requested to see documents more closely. Once he asked the security guy to replay a section of the footage, but mostly he just watched and listened. I wanted to scream. Why aren't you fighting? Why aren't you defending me? Finally, Ms. Crawford stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution rests. The judge turned to Daniel. Mr. Ashford, does the defense wish to present any witnesses? Daniel stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Gregory Ashford to the stand. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Gregory's face went red. Ms. Crawford shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Mr. Ashford is listed as a witness in the prosecution's own filings, Daniel said calmly. I have every right to call him. The judge thought for a moment, then nodded. The witness will take the stand. I watched Gregory walk up there, and for the first time I saw something I'd never seen before. He looked worried. Not just annoyed or angry, actually worried. The bailiff swore him in. Daniel walked forward, and suddenly he didn't look young anymore. He looked focused. Dangerous even. "Mr. Ashford," Daniel said, "you own a construction company, correct?" Gregory blinked. "Yes." "And that company has been very successful over the years, hasn't it?" "Yes. In fact, according to public records, your company was worth approximately $50 million as of last year." "Approximately, yes. So you're a wealthy man." "I've done well for myself." Daniel nodded. "Then can you explain why, on March 15th of this year, you withdrew $300,000 in cash from your business account?" The courtroom went dead silent. Gregory's face turned a shade paler. "I don't recall." "Let me refresh your memory." Daniel walked to his table and picked up a paper. "This is a bank statement from First National. It shows a withdrawal of $300,000 cash on March 15th. That's your signature on the withdrawal slip, isn't it?" Ms. Crawford stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. Where did defense counsel obtain these documents?" "From the bank," Daniel said calmly. "Public record. Anyone can request transaction records for business accounts when there's an ongoing legal investigation. I filed the request 2 days ago." The judge looked at the paper, then at Gregory. "Mr. Ashford, is that your signature?" Gregory's jaw worked. "Yes, but—" "So you withdrew $300,000 in cash," Daniel continued. "And then, 3 weeks later, you reported that $200,000 was stolen from your home safe. Is that correct?" "The two things aren't related, aren't they? Because it's interesting. You withdrew $300,000. You claim $200,000 was stolen. That leaves $100,000 unaccounted for. Where is that money, Mr. Ashford?" "I don't have to explain my personal finances to you. You do when you're accusing an innocent woman of theft." Daniel's voice had gotten harder. "You do when you're trying to send someone to prison for something they didn't do." Gregory's face was red now. "I didn't. She was in my study. The cameras." "Let's talk about those cameras." Daniel turned to the jury. "The prosecution showed us footage of Sarah Rivers entering the study on April 2nd at 2:15 p.m. The timestamp shows she was there for approximately 4 minutes. What the prosecution didn't show you is the footage from the other cameras in the house." He pulled out his phone and connected it to the courtroom's display screen. A video started playing. "This is from the hallway camera, time-stamped 2:10 p.m. on the same day. Watch." On the screen, I saw myself walking down the hallway with my cleaning supplies. Then Gregory appeared from the other direction. He stopped me. Even without sound, you could see him talking to me, gesturing toward his study. "My father asked Sarah to clean his study that day," Daniel said. "She didn't go in there on her own. He specifically requested it. And here's what's really interesting." The video fast-forwarded. Another timestamp. 2:19 p.m. Gregory walked into his study. The door closed. 4 minutes passed. He came back out, carrying a briefcase. "This is 1 minute after Sarah left the study," Daniel said. "My father went in right after her with a briefcase, and if we check the garage camera..." Another video. Gregory putting the briefcase in his car trunk, getting in, driving away. He left the house immediately after Sarah cleaned his study, and he didn't come back until 4:30 p.m., 2 hours later, without the briefcase. The courtroom was buzzing now. Gregory's lawyer was on her feet, objecting to something, but I couldn't hear her over the ringing in my ears. Daniel turned to his father. "You set her up, didn't you? You withdrew the money yourself. You needed it for something. I don't know what yet, but I'll find out. And then you blamed Sarah because she was convenient, because she was just the maid, because you thought no one would question it. That's not... I would never..." Gregory was standing now, his hands gripping the witness stand. "Where's the money, Dad?" "I don't have to answer that." "Where's the money?" "Your Honor." Ms. Crawford was almost shouting now, but Daniel didn't stop. Is it gambling debts? A bad investment? Blackmail? What's worth destroying an innocent woman's life? And that's when Gregory Ashford broke. It was supposed to be a good investment, he shouted. Raymond said it was foolproof. He said I'd double my money in 6 months. How was I supposed to know he was going to disappear with it? I needed to cover it somehow. The board was asking questions about the missing funds. I couldn't let them find out. He stopped. His face went white. His lawyer looked like she might faint. The judge banged her gavel, but it was too late. The damage was done. The rest happened so fast it felt like a dream. Ms. Crawford requested a recess. The judge granted it, but she also ordered Gregory to remain in the courthouse. A police officer came and stood near him just in case. Daniel and I went back to that little room. I sat down and put my head in my hands. I don't understand, I said. How did you know? How did you figure it all out? Daniel sat across from me, and now that it was over, I could see how exhausted he was. I didn't. Not all of it. I knew something was wrong because I know my father. He's been paranoid and secretive for months. And when he accused you, it just didn't fit. You're the most honest person I've ever met, Sarah, so I started digging. But the bank records, the cameras, I requested the bank records on a hunch. The cameras, I've had access to our home security system since I was 16. Dad never changed the passwords. I spent the last 2 days going through every single minute of footage from the week the money supposedly went missing. And I found the gaps. The moments that didn't make sense, like, why would you steal money and then keep showing up for work for 3 more weeks? Why wouldn't you run? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. I couldn't run. I can't even afford a bus ticket. His expression softened. I know, and that's what made me so angry. He was going to destroy your life, and you didn't even have the resources to fight back. That's not justice. That's not okay. Tears were running down my face now. I couldn't stop them. You barely know me. Why would you risk everything for me? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Do you remember when I was 16? I shook my head. I didn't start working for your family until you were already in college. Right. But I came home that first Christmas after you started, and I watched you. I watched how kind you were to everyone. How you asked the gardener about his daughter's wedding, how you brought extra food for the security guard who worked late shifts, how you always cleaned up after yourself and never acted like the staff were invisible. He leaned forward, and I watched my father, how he talked to you like you were furniture, how he complained about you to his friends even though you did everything he asked, how he cut your bonus that year because he said you didn't need it as much as some people. I watched all of that and I was ashamed. Ashamed of him, ashamed that I didn't say anything. His voice dropped. When I heard he was accusing you of theft, I knew. I just knew, and I thought, not this time. This time I'm going to do something. Even if it means going against my own father, even if it means he never speaks to me again. Because you deserve someone in your corner, Sarah. Everyone deserves that. I couldn't speak, my throat was too tight, so I just reached across the table and grabbed his hand, and he held on like it was the most natural thing in the world. The charges were dropped that afternoon. Gregory was arrested instead. Fraud, embezzlement from his own company, and filing a false police report. His lawyer quit on the spot. The reporters swarmed him as they led him away in handcuffs. I didn't watch. I couldn't. Despite everything, some part of me still felt weird about it. He'd been my employer for 3 years. I'd cleaned his house, made his meals, seen him at his most normal, and now his life was falling apart. Daniel walked me out of the courthouse. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. It was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in weeks. What are you going to do now? He asked. I laughed. I don't know. Look for a new job, I guess. I'm pretty sure I won't be getting a reference from your father. You don't need his reference. I'll give you one. He paused. Actually, I have a better idea. I'm starting my own practice. Just me for now. I need someone to help with organizing case files, managing the office, making sure I don't forget to eat lunch. The pay isn't great yet, but it's honest work. You interested? I stared at him. You want to hire me? I want to work with you. There's a difference. Daniel, I'm not qualified to... You're smart. You're organized. You're honest. That's more qualified than half the people in this city. He smiled. Besides, you already know how I like my coffee. I saw you watching when I made it at home. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. 2 sugars, no cream. See? You're perfect for the job. We stood there on the courthouse steps as people rushed past us. Lawyers, defendants, families. Everyone with their own story, their own battles. Okay, I said finally. I'll do it. But on one condition. Name it. You teach me. About the law, about how you did what you did today. I want to learn. Something lit up in Daniel's eyes. You want to be a lawyer? Maybe. I don't know. But I want to understand how it works. How people like me can fight back when people like your father try to destroy us. I want to be able to help. He held out his hand. Deal. We'll figure it out together. I shook his hand, and for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. That was 3 years ago. I'm writing this now from the office Daniel and I share, though it's gotten bigger since those early days. We have 3 other lawyers working with us now, and 2 paralegals. We specialize in cases where powerful people try to crush regular people. Where employers abuse workers, where landlords exploit tenants, where the system forgets that justice is supposed to be for everyone, not just the people who can afford it. I'm not a lawyer yet, but I'm in law school now, night classes. Daniel was right. I'm pretty good at this. My professors say I have a gift for seeing the human side of the law, for understanding what's really at stake beneath all the legal language. Gregory Ashford is out of prison now. He served 18 months and lost everything, his company, his reputation, most of his money. I saw him once about 6 months ago at a coffee shop downtown. He was sitting alone, looking old and tired. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stood up and walked over. Sarah, he said. My name sounded strange in his mouth. Mr. Ashford. He stopped, started again. I owe you an apology, a real one. Not the court-ordered statement my lawyer made me give, a real apology. I waited. I was desperate, he said, and scared, and I took the coward's way out. I hurt you because I thought I could get away with it, because you were just... He couldn't finish. Just the maid, I said quietly. Yes. His shoulders sagged. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I thought about not forgiving him, about holding on to the anger, the hurt, the fear of those awful weeks when I thought my life was over. It would have been easy. It would have been justified. But I thought about Daniel and the risk he took. I thought about the second chance I'd been given. I thought about the person I wanted to be, not just a survivor, but someone who could show grace even when it was hard. I forgive you, I said, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let it go. He nodded, eyes wet. Then he left. I haven't seen him since. Daniel asked me about it later, whether I regretted forgiving Gregory. I told him no. Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'd spent too much of my life feeling powerless. Forgiveness was power. Choosing to move forward was power. That's why you're going to be a great lawyer, Daniel said. You understand that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about healing, making things right. Maybe he's right. I hope so. Last week, a woman came into our office. Her name was Maria, and she was crying so hard she could barely speak. Her employer, a wealthy family on the north side, was accusing her of stealing jewelry. She had no money for a lawyer. No one would help her. I sat her down, made her tea, let her cry. Then I said the words Daniel said to me 3 years ago. We're going to help you, and we're going to figure this out, together. The look on her face, relief, hope, gratitude. That's why I do this now. That's why I'll keep doing it, because I was the person in that courtroom with no voice. I was the person everyone had already decided was guilty, and someone stood up for me when they didn't have to. Now it's my turn to stand up for someone else. The gavel falls. Justice, real justice, doesn't always happen in courtrooms. Sometimes it happens in the quiet moments when someone sees you, really sees you, and decides you're worth fighting for. Sometimes it happens when a son looks at his father's crimes and chooses truth over loyalty. Sometimes it happens when a maid in a borrowed dress finds her voice. And sometimes it happens in a small office where a young lawyer and his assistant work late into the night, preparing to defend someone who has nothing except their innocence. That's the justice I believe in now. The kind that costs something. The kind that requires courage. The kind that changes everything. When I think back to that day in the courtroom, the buzzing lights, the trembling in my hands, the hopelessness that sat heavy in my chest, I realize now it wasn't just the day I was saved, it was the day everything changed. It was the day a quiet young man stood up for someone the world had already judged. The day truth outweighed power. The day I stopped being just the maid and became something more, someone who mattered, someone who fought back. 3 years later, the scars have faded, but the lessons remain. Justice isn't a word carved in stone, it's something we build, one act of courage at a time. It's in the choices we make when no one's watching. It's in standing beside those who've been forgotten. I've seen what fear can destroy, but I've also seen what compassion can rebuild. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the smallest act of courage, a young lawyer walking down the aisle of a courtroom, a maid refusing to break, a word of forgiveness offered when it's hardest, can set off a chain reaction that changes lives forever. Because justice doesn't always start with power. Sometimes it starts with the last person anyone expects to speak. Sometimes it starts with the last person in the room. Here's a powerful moral that perfectly fits the tone and message of the last person in the room. Moral of the story. True justice isn't about wealth, titles, or power. It's about courage, compassion, and truth. One act of bravery can expose lies. One act of kindness can restore hope. No matter how small or powerless you feel, standing up for what's right can change everything, for you and for others who come after. Dear friends, what you just saw is only one part of the bigger picture. In the next video, I'll reveal the twist no one saw coming, so make sure you're here when it drops. I would love to know what you would have done in this situation. Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading every single comment. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and don't forget to give this video a like, hit the subscribe button and share with someone who needs to hear it.